Caroline van Vlaardingen. Welcome to In Search of Dopamine, a podcast series that brings together healthcare professionals, people with Parkinson's, and caregivers to explore the challenges and symptoms and live with the disease. Hello, my name is Caroline van Vlaardingen, and in this episode of In Search of Dopamine, we are going to discuss the symptom of fatigue and how to manage it. Fatigue is a symptom experienced by many people with Parkinson's disease. It is over and above the usual fatigue that many of us feel in our daily lives. And so I'd like to introduce now my two guests today. Daniel Dorsey is a former vice president at a telecom company. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 42 and have been living with it for 15 years now, right, Daniel?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
And we also have with us today Cassandra McCullough. Cassandra is a kinesiologist at the CIUS de l'Est de Montréal, and she has worked with a lot of patients in rehab from hospitals and people who've been diagnosed with Parkinson's as well as other neurological diseases. Thanks so much for being here, Cassandra.
My pleasure as well.
So I think it's fair to say that we all feel a certain amount of fatigue as we get older, and especially in our fast-paced lives where sleep is not always prioritized. But daily fatigue with Parkinson's is on a whole different level. It is estimated that more than half of patients, 50%, experience fatigue to a debilitating level. And we say debilitating because this is not just a moment of fatigue that quickly passes, but fatigue on a much deeper level where the patient just has no choice but to rest. So, Daniel, let's start right off with you. I briefly mentioned that fatigue is a common symptom for many people with Parkinson's, and there are different reasons for that fatigue. Some of it is physical, some of it is emotional and mental. Tell me about when you started to notice that you were having issues with energy.
I'll tell you, in again, my previous life, I was a competitive squash player. So anybody who knows the game of squash, you're running around the whole time, and fatigue. I would get tired after playing a full match. I mean, I would get tired and nod off. So that's how it started. And
How old were you then?
I was, it was 2008. So I was training to be the national champion. I mean, that was my goal. And I was ranked in the top 20 in Ontario. That was my best ranking ever. So I was in Ontario. I lived in Toronto for 10 years. And I found myself getting tired after the match, which is normal, but taking a nap after the match, unplanned, was a little bit strange.
So were you in your 20s or 30s when this was happening?
No, that came more when I was late 30s. And really, my story is kind of funny yet professional at the same time. Mm-hmm. So my left shoulder locked up, and I went for a massage. I mean, what else do you do, right? So I went for a massage, and the masseur got angry at me, and she said, I keep unlocking your shoulder, but as soon as I don't pay attention to it, 2 minutes later, it locks up again. And when I say a locked shoulder, it means it's as if your shoulder is attached to your ear. So that's locking. So it's very stiff. And again, my shoulder was locking. So she said, you don't need a massage, you need a physiotherapist. So duly noted, I took my reference slip and I went and found a physiologist who could take me right away. So he examined me and he excused himself, but he had to just go out to his office to get some paperwork. He never returned, but his assistant did. And she said, Mr. Dorsey, The physiotherapist excuses himself, but he had to run to another client. And he gave you a reference slip for this doctor, Dr. He said, he told me to give you this, you should go see Dr. ASAP. So I said, well, okay, that's pretty good. I went from a massage, I went to a physiotherapist, and now I'm graduating to a doctor. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I went to see Dr. And in his very, I call it charming, and I'm doing the two fingers here. His charming way, he goes, oh, you have Parkinson's, all right. You're going to live a long life and you'll be great.
Just like that.
Just like that. And I'm like, Doctor, do you understand that I have 2 young children? This is the other gift that keeps on taking is Parkinson's. I cry about the strangest things. Like there's instant.
Nothing strange about crying when you think about your children and your family and how your life is changing, Daniel. When you tell us about how sudden that was, that must have been such a shock to you.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to your fatigue level, because that's what we're talking about today now. So you were having to lie down after you were playing squash, which is maybe not what your opponents had to do. I look at you, you're a very tall man. Tall people sometimes need more rest. It's a lot to carry a big body around, a taller body around. But what was it that made you think, okay, besides this doctor telling you this, that fatigue was going to be a real symptom for you of Parkinson's?
Well, I mean, as you had mentioned earlier, I was part of the telecom industry here in Canada, and we were introducing the new internet lines of telephony called SIP trunking. Now, I don't expect anyone to know that or understand it, so I just say Canadian telecom industry. But where the fatigue started to slowly, infiltrate my life was that I would get tired or fatigued at any time of the day. And that played, it made me unreliable for meetings because, I could have a meeting at 2:00 and then at 1:45, Parkinson says, no, you need to lie down because you're going to.
And explain that feeling, Daniel. It's, I need to lie down, I'm a little tired, or I'm exhausted and I can't even sit up anymore. What does it feel like? Yeah.
I don't have that super exhausted. Every Parkinson's path is unique. The progression of the disease is never consistent. My fatigue is not the overwhelming fatigue that you sometimes get, when you after running a half marathon, for instance, where your whole body is saying, lie down, please get some sleep and wake up in 5 hours and recharge your batteries. No, mine was, it was consistently up and down.
And you would feel it where in your body?
Well, mainly in my shoulders and arms and in hands. It's a stiffness. I know we associate shakiness with Parkinson's or having a tremor. But in fact, Parkinson's takes advantage of both of those, the stiffness and the shakiness, and exposes itself on both levels.
Is that typical, Cassandra? The arms, the upper body starts to feel exhausted?
So, as you mentioned, Parkinson has a different sort of path for everybody. Well, for some people, it'll be the upper body and the shoulders and the back. But I've also had a lot of people say they feel heavy fatigue in the legs, that the legs feel heavy and lifting them and walking is a very difficult task.
Yes.
So it's a whole body physical thing, and it does express itself physically, but can it also express itself mentally, the fatigue?
100%. So there's the whole physical fatigue, but then there's the mental fatigue as well that comes into play. So difficulty concentrating, the feeling of tiredness, feelings of depression sometimes that can come along with that as well.
Emotionally, you feel exhausted too at times?
Well, this is my personal discovery. I call it the 8-minute mark. And my power plant or my energy station with dopamine, I produce enough energy to have an argument with you, not heated, but let's have a vigorous debate with you. I can last 8 minutes. But at the 8-minute mark, the power plant says, no more, you need to rest. So 8 minutes I have. And that includes vigorous debate. Look, we just had a U.S. presidential election. I had a lot of vigorous debates with many different people. But 8 minutes was, I don't reveal that to any of my debaters.
You don't want to give them the upper hand.
That's right. I don't tell them.
I'm only good for 8 minutes, folks.
I have a good resolution.
Right.
After 7.5 minutes, I say, okay, well, I think we can conclude this and agree to disagree. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. So you describe your body as like a battery system, or what did you call it again? You called it a
power plant.
A power plant, exactly. That's so interesting. I mean, we all feel that we have so much energy in our lives, and most of us have to just lie down at the end of a day. Although as we get older, we like those little naps. But is that also something that Parkinson patients are very conscious of, is that energy level, that battery plant inside them?
I love that image that you give to it as a battery plant. I think that it helps to sort of picture fatigue and Parkinson's and energy levels and everything. And I do think that it's something that a lot of people with Parkinson's have to take into account and be aware of in order to plan daily tasks and activities.
And like a battery, you can check and see where the level's at, right?
Exactly.
And so you need to monitor yourself to say, okay, am I capable of this right now or not? Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you deal with it. When you just can't do something because you're too tired, what do you do? Do you nap? Do you lie down? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to lie down. So, but again, it's like when I feel it coming on, an episode coming on, I want to lie down on the couch and just so I've pre-positioned all the pillows on my couch and blankets and just so that I can just fall in there. The challenge, though, is that once you get in a comfortable position, is that when the episode is over and you come out of, you've recharged a bit of the batteries, how do you get up from the couch? And then, or how do you get out of bed? I mean, one of my challenges, which is getting out of bed. And that's when I've had my most accidents.
I want to talk about that a little bit later, but I just want to ask you quickly, Daniel, before we move on. Do you fall asleep or do you just lie down and that's enough?
No, I fall asleep.
Okay. You do need to actually fall asleep.
Yeah.
So just taking your load off and lying on the couch is not enough and closing your eyes.
No.
And how long do you sleep for?
About an hour and a half.
Okay.
At most, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Do you set an alarm to wake yourself up or do you wake up on your own?
No, I do not set an alarm. I wake up on my own.
Okay. So an hour and a half of sleep, a nap, and that's once or more times a day?
Yeah, it could be once it's definitely once per day in the late afternoon before dinner. That's a prime time, but sometimes before noon is also a good time.
Depending on what you've had going on that day.
Once to twice a day.
So tell us about napping, Cassandra. I guess when the body says you have to shut down, you have to shut down. But is there an ideal time to nap, or can you go as long as you want?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to listen to your body and rest when you need to rest. And napping can be something that can help to recharge your battery, as you say.
Yes.
It's definitely important to make sure, though, that you're not napping for too long and too much during the day, because then it can be more difficult to have a good night's sleep during the night as well.
You are on levodopa?
Yes.
As most patients with Parkinson's are?
5 dosages a day.
What about taking that? Is it important to you that you take it at certain times and that you don't mix it with food, or you do? What do you do there to optimize your power plant?
You just touched on 2 of them right there. It's taking it at the same time every day. Very important. And taking before eating, because it's fascinating. Where the effect, where my challenges are, is that if I eat food that's not easily digestible, that's when I will get fatigued. Okay, so I have to eat foods that are easily digestible. And
so even digestion takes a certain amount of energy away from you.
Well, that's exactly it. Digestion, now I've graduated. I never had a problem with digestion. I mean, I've been eating McDonald's and junk food my whole life, right? And then suddenly I have to take care of myself and watch what I eat. So, sort of stuff like dairy products are very healthy. Who could argue that a glass of milk is challenging? For me, it's challenging because there's a lot of extra vitamins, in milk or dairy products. So I don't eat dairy products. It's just too challenging for my body to digest that. And that could be a glass of milk. It could be, croissants are deadly. I love croissants. And
what is it, the butter in them?
The butter.
Yeah, the butter. Interesting. Have you heard of this before, Cassandra, that nutrition plays a role in the medication and how it affects the patient?
Nutrition definitely plays a role in the medication and as well as energy levels too. So like you say, when you have a meal, sometimes especially if it's a large meal, then afterwards you can feel a set of fatigue because the body's using its energy to digest.
That's right.
So knowing what you can and can't digest easily or not can definitely help to manage some of that too.
Yeah.
And Daniel, you take this medication 5 times a day. Do you take it at times when you're not eating or when you are eating? When does it work best for you?
It works best. My new minutes of life, 26 minutes. So when I wake up in the morning, I take my levodopa right away to start the day. And in 26 minutes, it kicks in. And I got movement back. I got energy. I'm feeling great. The sunshine is out. And that's how I can set my whole day up to be successful, is that get that morning levodopa or dopamine push. But
on an empty stomach.
Definitely on an empty stomach. Taking dopamine after you've eaten a meal, you don't really feel it kick in, and it takes a long time. It's not 26 minutes anymore. It's more like an hour.
Cassandra, is it important to time your medications at certain times of the day? And if so, why?
Yes. So medications, the timing of medications for Parkinson's is something that is very, very important. It's going to be different for each person as well. So some people will take it twice a day. Some people it's going to be much more frequently. So it really depends on the type of treatment that people have. But what's important about the timing of medications is how it affects how we function and our energy levels as well. So people will tend to have more energy and be able to do more activities in the moments when the medication is at its highest. And when it starts to get a little bit lower, that's when people start to have less energy and have more difficulty in doing their daily tasks.
So is it important for the patient then to monitor how they're feeling through the day so that they can then tell their doctor, okay, this worked for only a little bit of time, didn't work as well as, I was hoping. Is that important to monitor your day and have those notes ready?
Definitely. I think, unfortunately, there are some days where Parkinson's is just going to be more present and we're going to feel more symptoms. But I think it's important to keep a track on a regular basis to see how it's affecting you. If you're feeling more of those Parkinson-like symptoms and the medication seems to be less effective, then it's definitely something to keep track of and to mention to the doctor.
Let's talk about exercise. It is important, right? Why is it important, and what kinds of exercises work best?
I like to say that the best exercise is the exercise that you enjoy doing. So there are many types of exercises that are very good and beneficial for Parkinson's. But if you don't like doing that specific exercise, then it's going to be very hard to be motivated to participate in doing it.
Not much use if you don't want to do it.
Exactly, yes.
But are there typical exercises that are better than others?
Yeah, I think exercises that get your blood pumping, where you're breathing a little faster and where you're feeling hotter than usual, you're sweating a little bit. Those are the exercises that are definitely going to help. Exercises.
What does that do to the body when your heart rate is up and you're sweating a little bit? What's going on? The dopamine is being produced more?
Yeah. Okay. So when your heart rate is up, you have your blood circulating, you have all these neurotransmitters and good things being released from your brain that are going to help to keep the progression of Parkinson's at bay. And what it's also doing is as you exercise, you're keeping your muscle mass, you're keeping your endurance, all things that Parkinson's goes to attack, unfortunately.
And even, those of us who are supposedly healthy have trouble sometimes getting the motivation to exercise. So it must be even harder if you're battling fatigue. What do you do about that?
I would say to go slowly but surely. So maybe for now, it's not doing an entire hour of exercise. Maybe for now, it's just starting off with 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. If after those 10 minutes, you tolerate it well, you're not feeling a complete exhaustion afterwards, and starting to slowly build more and more time throughout the day.
Anything is better than nothing.
Yes. Yeah, and starting off slowly without, like I said, without giving yourself a very big expectation of doing a lot of exercise all at once. Doing it progressively, a little bit here and there throughout the day, maintaining that is what's going to help.
Do you exercise, Daniel, now?
Yes, I do.
What do you do?
I attend a workout class tailored for people with Parkinson's. So I participate in. You'll like these exercises. Walking. Okay, I walk for 10 minutes, and then I cycle for 10 minutes, and then I stretch for 10 minutes, and then I box for 10 minutes.
After you've done your 40-minute workout, the 10 minutes of each activity, and you do that every day or every second day?
Three times a week.
3 times a week. How do you feel after?
I feel tired. Naturally, but the benefit comes on the next day. The next day, I have better waking up capabilities in the morning than I had the previous day.
I want to talk about sleep now. We've talked about napping and how it's important to not overdo napping.
Yes.
When you go to sleep, do you have to be very regimented about going to sleep at the right time every night, or do you go according to what your body tells you?
Wow, that's a good question.
And how do you sleep? Do you sleep well?
Yes and no. I'm, and there's always, Parkinson introduces new symptoms every day. So one thing that I struggle with, or I have a challenge, is incontinence. And I mean, if anyone's ever fallen asleep in a bathtub, it can get kind of cold, and it's not good for your body to be that cold. So incontinence proves to be a challenge. So I'm up, maybe I'm up it's at least 2 times a night to go to the washroom and try and empty out the bladder.
And that's typical too, right? That's a typical
Unfortunately,
symptom.
Yeah. Parkinson's affects the entire body, so that includes the digestive system and the urinary system as well.
Yeah.
And that can definitely affect sleep too, having to get up in the middle of the night as well. It
Do you have
disturbs.
any strategies that you can share on that, Daniel, to keep yourself from having to get up too much?
My strategy is have as many. There's a special type of if you've ever been to a hospital, there's an under
Blanket?
Yeah, an under blanket that on one side is rubberized,
Yes.
and on the other side is like an absorbing material.
Right.
So my advice is have as many of those as possible, because you could lose the bladder at any time of the night, and it's inconsistent. But what you can do is when you have many of these blankets, the one side rubber, the other side
Cloth?
cloth. Yeah.
So you sleep better because you're not having to wake up and go and change your sheets, which would be terribly disruptive.
Well, I every night I actually at least once I changed this special sheet because I invariably have lost some of them. I've had an accident.
And so that wakes you up as well, Daniel.
That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
so do you feel the exhaustion from that as well the next day?
Yeah. Well, this is the constant battle of Parkinson's, is that you want to sleep more, right? We all expect a general sleep of between 6 to 8 hours an evening, and I can't get that. So it's 3. I sort of have a 3.5 hour sort of window. So if I watch, I try and convince myself, okay, if I watch TV until midnight, that should make me tired, and I can wake up at 6. But invariably, it never happens.
We talked about dyskinesia briefly earlier, and for people who don't understand, it is the involuntary movements, right, that the body makes when you have Parkinson's. That also can keep people up at night, I understand.
Yes, the uncontrollable movements, the shakings, sometimes restless leg syndrome as well. Moving in your sleep, reenacting dreams can be something that happens too.
Or severe cramping.
Yes, as well. Spasms.
In the lower leg. Oh, my goodness.
So that would make sense then, that people are more tired the next day because they're not sleeping well.
Yeah, there's a lot of, as you can see, there's a lot of different factors that affect sleep for people with Parkinson's, for sure.
It's I think a lot, in the medical society, there's not, I'm going to say just in general, people say, Parkinson's is linked to the lack of dopamine production. But you can see that, Cassandra outlined it, that there's these little effects on your body actually create other effects and other symptoms that you keep trying to manage, right?
And that in itself must be exhausting.
That's
Trying to figure out what's the next thing.
That's right. Or what's the next drug you should take? Okay, we spoke briefly about incontinence, but when I started taking medication help restrict or help my bladder hold on to the incontinence. What happened was I started to get a pain in my midsection, and it hurt. Holding this drug was holding on to my bladder, and it hurt me. So I told my doctor. So again, you can see that there's just a cascading. It's really, everyone is unique, and there are sometimes cascading symptoms that would never have existed if you didn't have the primary symptoms.
Yeah. It's all interconnected. The body, as you say, is a complicated piece of equipment, and it is all interconnected, and that's why it's so important to stay on top of your medications for all of these symptoms, I would imagine.
Yes. So definitely checking in with the doctor, making sure that you're taking the medications as you should be, and discussing too when noticing that medications are bringing on different side effects. Like you say, with that pain you had, I think it's important to bring it up when stuff like that happens.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, I'm just curious about your life now. You're 57?
I just celebrated my 58th birthday last month.
Right. So. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And do you live alone? Do you live with a partner? How do you manage?
I live alone in a senior's residence. So this is it's a public-private. And the point is that I'm autonomous. Now, this is the word used in the healthcare circles in Quebec, autonome or autonomous. That's the key. That's how healthcare Quebec is going to judge your progress. Can you live alone? And that's obviously, it's pretty good.
Does the building that you're in have support for you that you might take advantage of if you need it?
Well, the answer is yes. And the way it's support is that there's an internal community. Like, this is not a public, like when I say I'm in apartment 900, that's internal to the community and to the environment, the landscape. It's an internalized residence.
It's a private residence.
Correct.
Not a government facility that you're in. And are people able to help you, on the lookout for you? Do you help each other? Because you say that it's the seniors. And I'm just wondering socially, how do you manage that? Because I'm sure this has affected your work life, your physical life, your social life. So how are you managing that aspect?
Well, you hit on something that is I'm very passionate about, and that's called community. And as we age, it is incredibly important to maintain your community, whatever that is, because these are the folks, your friends, your people, your partners, or your other external friends. These are the folks that say, and here, listen to this logic. I haven't seen Dan for 2 dinners in a row. He hasn't come out to eat dinner 2 nights in a row. Maybe I should do a check just to make sure he's okay. Mm-hmm. It's that type of instinct from your community that you built, your friends and family that you put together. They're the ones that act that early alarm, that says there's a problem. And I had a very good friend of mine who used that very logic. Dan never misses 2 dinners in a row.
Especially when something's on the menu?
Exactly.
But you seem like a social guy. You like the company of other people. You don't want to be alone. So it's great that you've cultivated that for yourself.
Yeah, for myself and also, my community and my group, we're about 20 strong, and it's through the it's through those 20 folks that someone, will knock on your door and check on you.
Yeah. Sounds like you live in an amazing building, Daniel. And I'm glad that you're in such a great place. And I just want to, we're almost out of time, so I want to finish up on that. The importance of support and community, as Daniel was talking about. How important is that for a person with Parkinson?
Parkinson's can be very isolating. So it's definitely nice to hear that you've built such a community and you have a community there to support you. And I think it's important for others too with Parkinson's to be able to find a community as you did in order to break that isolation and the consequences that can come along with it.
And that's part of the reason why we're doing these podcasts, is to build up a community and to talk to people who are living with the disease so that we can all understand it better and the different symptoms and how we can support each other, how you can support other people and they can support you. And that's what Parkinson Quebec is all about. And I just wanted to say that we're almost out of time, but I do want to say as well that while this is an English episode, there are French episodes as well, or there is a French episode that talks about fatigue and sleep. And there's a lot more information in that episode as well. We cannot end this discussion without letting you at home know that there are many resources out there for you. The Parkinson Quebec website has a treasure trove of information and activities that you can do online. I've looked at it. It's amazing. It's so well organized and so easy to find things on there. As well, a reminder that Parkinson Quebec and its partners are continuously developing new resources out there to better serve you and your family members. So you can consult the Parkinson Quebec website at parkinsonquebec.ca and, of course, on social media for more. As I said, they have videos on YouTube and in other places. I'd like to thank you both for coming in today. This was such an interesting discussion. Daniel, you're very courageous to talk about some of the things that you talked about today. And I want to thank you so much for everything you shared. You gave people great information that I hope can make their lives better as well. And Cassandra, thank you so much. And thank you to the CIUS de l'Est de Montréal for sharing you with us and for speaking with us today as well. Thank you so much, both of you. That concludes this episode of the podcast series In Search of Dopamine. The podcast is made possible by a grant from the Quebec government under its program Québec Amis des Aînés. Our topic today was managing fatigue. If you'd like to know more about this topic or any other topic related to Parkinson's disease, please visit the Parkinson Quebec website. Again, it's at www.parkinsonquebec.ca, or you can call their support number 1-800-720-1307. I'm Caroline van Vlaardingen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you again soon.